start. So I'm delighted to welcome you, Tracey, to Flavours. Have so many solo travellers and lots of guests who are in the mature bracket. So I'm sure they're going to get lots of useful information and tips and ideas from this. I wonder if I could just start by asking you what inspired your Fighting 50 blog?
Well, when I turned 50, I think the world was a very different place to it is now. 10 years ago, there was a huge amount of negativity surrounding older women. And I hit 50, I was very positive, I was upbeat. I didn't feel down about it at all. I actually was embracing it, really. And everywhere that I was going for information, all I kept getting really was older women really shouldn't be seen and shouldn't be heard. And it was a time when the BBC had fired Arlene Phillips and Miriam O'Reilly. And it was really, you know, older women should just go away quietly, get on with their life and not make a fuss, really. And this didn't resonate with me at all because having never been one to not make a fuss, I couldn't understand why, you know, at 50, suddenly our life was supposed to be put on hold, you know, that we were then going to just potter about in the garden and kind of wait to die. And when I looked at my peer group, they were doing amazing things. They were starting companies, they were, you know, climbing mountains, running marathons. And also because we were the sandwich generation, or are the sandwich generation, we're caring for, you know, parents, partners, grandchildren, our own children, and holding down a job. And at the same time, we were getting the media saying, well, actually, you know, really, you're a bit too old for all of this. What are you doing about your wrinkles? What are you doing about your weight? What are you going to, you know, do in the future? So I found there was this overwhelming at that time amount of negativity surrounding older women. And what I felt was I wanted to create an environment where older women could get really good health, beauty and fitness advice, and spoken to them in a voice that they could resonate with, a voice that spoke to them as they were now. Because everything I was looking at was telling you how you should behave as you got older. So, for example, on my 50th birthday, I got details of a walk-in bath, a stair lift. I wish I was joking. You know, a funeral plan. And at the time I was thinking, is this how, firstly, how society sees me? And is it also how I'm marketed to? I'm being marketed to as a person who is, you know, just looking at the end of their life and not at the middle of their life. At the time, I couldn't understand, you know, 50 is not old anymore. It's not old. It's, you know, women are having to work until their middle to late 60s. So how do we level that up with being told, well, you're not going to be able to climb in your bath, you know, sorry, love, but forget the stairs. Let's have a stair lift. So with all this in mind, I just felt, you know, I've got to do something about this. I wanted to create this space with expert comments and expert advice on how to just look good and feel good as you get older, but spoken to you where you are now, in your 50s, not in your 70s or possibly 80s.
I think what's coming across as well, which is really lovely, is that it's that confidence. And so often when I'm speaking to guests or meeting guests, when you do hit 50, 60, it's so often it seems to be the desire to do things is still there, but it's just that confidence. Yeah. Because you say you're getting that constant messaging of you're old and you shouldn't be doing this. And yeah.
I think also it's a very interesting situation. I'm sure you've heard this phrase many times before, that older women feel they're invisible. But in fact, they're only invisible in as much as not seeing women that they can relate to in everyday life in positive situations. So, and I have to say, I'm I'm really talking about 10 years ago. Things have definitely changed recently. So, you know, it has, without a doubt, it has changed. But certainly 10 years ago, you saw women in these negative situations, maybe, you know, in a mobility scooter or in a walk-in bath or something like that. You used to go into Boots or into Selfridges, John Lewis, and you weren't seeing yourself represented on the beauty counters. You were being served by younger women. All the advertising was aimed at you, but portraying younger women in the ads. So there is this myth that women become invisible, but it's not them themselves that become invisible. What they're not seeing is enough women of their own age in positive situations. You know, we've got wonderful older actresses, really exciting older actresses, but for a long time that kind of middle life woman wasn't portrayed necessarily in positive roles. But I think that has changed.
And in terms of sort of practically when you were trying to get your message out then, did you have a sort of PR background or?
Yes, my background's advertising. I worked at a number of different London agencies. I worked at Saatchi & Saatchi for a few years, and then in the 80s, when I had my daughter, I stopped working and had a 25-year maternity leave. Longest maternity leave in history. I brought up my daughter and my son, and the only way that I could kind of keep ahead of using the internet, I had a small Amazon business and an eBay business, really just to keep up with technology and how to basically use the computer. But then when I hit 50 and had the idea for Fighting 50, at least I had, you know, I had a bit of advertising background, but I was an account exec. I wasn't, you know, I wasn't really writing very much copy, a few press releases maybe. So it's been a very big learning curve.
Yeah, because technology now has changed. I remember when we were looking, for example, at social media maybe 10 years ago, you know, we didn't, things like Instagram, we thought, oh no, that's for young ones, you know, we're going to focus on Twitter. And of course, you know, that's completely changed.
Yeah.
Keep changing constantly.
Well, that's changed exactly as you say, because I launched the website on Twitter and promoted it there for a long time. And when Instagram came along, I didn't get it. Absolutely did not get it. I couldn't see any reason why, you know, posting photographs was going to make any difference to my following or readership. And of course, you know, how naive was I? So yes, I'm still catching up with Instagram. Had I have really embraced it in the beginning, I'm sure I would have had a much better and possibly more engaged following. So I am catching up.
And when you're now sort of, it sounds to me like you came to it with quite a clear sort of plans and lists of things you wanted to tackle. Now, do you take more sort of lead from your followers, or when you're sort of looking at different areas, or how does it work now?
I think, to be honest, I've made it up as I've gone along, is the absolute truth, because in the beginning, this was just a kind of wild, I woke up one morning and I said, you know what, I'm starting a website and it's called Fighting 50 and it's going to give this kind of information. And my husband was just like, okay, fine, you know, sort of off you go. And I literally did make it up as I went along. And what I did was I wrote copy, and also I involved experts to answer my questions, really. It was all the things that I wanted to know. What supplements should I take? What exercise should I do? What skincare products should I buy? So really, a lot of it has been based on what I needed as a woman in her 50s, knowing that the chances were a lot of my readers were going to want the same things. I do get letters, and that does lead to, you know, I had a woman recently saying, I just need to know what supplements to take for menopause. Mm-hmm. So, you know, we then pull the experts together and look at, you know, what are the best supplements, what should we take? This week we're looking at when should we take those supplements, because obviously some supplements are better to be taken in the morning than the evening. So we're looking at, you know, what's best to actually get the best from your supplements.
I think I noticed last night you were looking at you were looking at this new
Alice's book.
Yeah, that looks great. Tell me about that.
Well, Alice Hart Davis is an amazing journalist, and she's very tenacious and literally does put people on the spot. And she's a bit like a dog with a bone. She really wants to, get to the bottom of what the product does and how it works. And Alice has just brought out a second book in the Tweakments series, which was all about skincare. And I just love nothing more than reading about skincare. So so I'm literally devouring Alice's book at the moment so that I can review that. And again, in the last couple of weeks, I've read 2 books on skincare by 2 journalists, as it happens, and 1 book, to be honest, I wouldn't recommend to my readers because I just don't think it's great value for money. Now, Alice's, I'm hoping by the time I get to the end of that, I already know that this is the book to buy if you were going to choose between the 2. So it's nice to be able to feed that back to readers.
No, it looked great. I was thinking I might get some top tips on wrinkles and things like that. And if you are giving people tips and advice of how to make the most out of your 50s and 60s, what are the tips that you're giving? What would you be?
Well, the thing is, I think for me personally, the most important thing is move. Keep moving. People do tend to become more sedentary as they get older, and there's this kind of feeling that it's expected, that you're expected to slow down, you're expected to do less, you're expected to maybe exercise less and be weaker. And the emphasis of Fighting 50, and the reason I called it Fighting 50, I've had a lot of people say, oh, it's such a negative name, why would you call it Fighting 50? Why aren't you embracing it? And I've had to explain, and I have to say only to a handful of people in 8 years, that it's like fighting fit. The idea of Fighting 50 is to keep on top of it and to conquer any fears that you might have and to really actually embrace this age and get the most out of it. So I think we have this perception that with age comes a weakness and it becomes something that we should be afraid of. And in fact, I think it's almost like a reawakening. It's a period of time for growth. If we stopped thinking about it as being a decline and thought about it as an increase, I think a lot of people will get a lot more out of their older age, because there's no reason we should stop learning, stop exercising. We can actually be fitter in our later life than we were in our earlier life. We have more time, more opportunity. This is something that I know Flavors are promoting, that when you have that time, you can continue to learn, you can enjoy, you can go on holidays. Last year, obviously not with your company, but with another company, I did a week's retreat with my daughter. And to be able to go and do that and spend a week where you just concentrate on yourself is an amazing gift. So
I think it's a gift, but I also think it's an investment in your health.
Without a doubt.
It's not really a holiday, it's not really a luxury, particularly I've just come back with some friends and we've been sort of walking and doing things like that, and and my husband's like, oh, you're just having a nice time with the girls drinking Prosecco. I was like, no, actually, it's real investment in your health and that sort of reset, I think, that everybody needs, particularly at the moment when it's just,
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's the other problem as you get older, that your responsibilities change. You may not be responsible for your children, but suddenly you are responsible for your parents. Now, I found this year, having gone from literally, running my family unit to now I'm running my family unit and my parents' family unit as well. So that pressure and that stress, I think we do need these breaks, we do need these holidays. So I think affording yourself enough time to recover from your daily life, even if you're not working, is still really, really important.
I think, and at the moment, obviously we can't travel, And I've seen quite a lot of online retreats and things like that. Have you been trying any kind of new?
I did, yes. I did a reset retreat, which is really to, stop you grabbing the bar of chocolate when you really want it at 4 o'clock. Can't say I've kept it up completely.
No,
That would be a total
we had Amanda Hamilton did a session with us a couple of weeks ago, and actually my takeaway from that was to make sure you had a decent lunch.
Yeah.
And if you had something like, a baked potato or a big salad or something really substantial at lunchtime, then you don't have that kind of 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock dip, and they're kind of getting home, having a glass of wine and a packet of crisps. Yeah, that's my crutch.
I think it's harder when you work from home because, I've always worked from home, so that hasn't really changed for me. But I know for a lot of women who are now working from home, that temptation to just put the kettle on and grab a biscuit or a cake or something it's so tempting and it's so easy. And the other problem is at the moment, that is our pleasure.
Yes, there's nothing else.
There is nothing else. What else do we get fun from? Eating and drinking. So
I know. Yeah, we've certainly, Flavours has been quite good because we've been doing some interviews a bit like this, so we've been able to sort of meet some, re-engage and meet people we haven't caught up with for ages. And we've been doing the online classes. And actually, what's been interesting with that is not so much the activity, it's actually that everyone gets to meet other people. And there's lots of, particularly if you've been isolating, you've been isolating or whatever, it's actually been quite nice that you just get on and, who are you and what are you doing? And
it's really nice. And in fact, my daughter said to me the other day, oh, for goodness sake, Mum, go and see someone who you're not related to. And I think that's the problem. You are seeing people that you're related to constantly. And, normally I would go to press events maybe once or twice a week, and you're meeting a lot of people and you have that social interaction. Whereas at the moment, thankfully, it is happening through Zoom. We had a Zoom cooking class this week, which was really great. We had Rob Hobson cooking a beetroot curry, and it sounds vile. It sounded, when I got the recipe, I was sort of looking at it like going, oh, lovely. And I said to my husband, I said, oh, Stuart, we got a beetroot curry for supper. And he just said, do we have to eat it? And I said, no, you don't have to eat it. But actually, I cooked it, and it's absolutely delicious. It was so good. It was really, really nice.
Is it quite sweet?
No, not at all, because you had a lot of spices, tomato and beetroot and coconut milk. Again, it just sounds so wrong.
Yes.
Actually, it really worked. So this was for heart health. So
yeah, that was good. Funnily enough, actually, again, going back to Amanda Hamilton, she was sort of suggesting just try 3 different things every week just now. Try some new recipes, and that is the thing. You've got time just now, haven't you, to plan?
Well, that's exactly what I've been doing. I'm a bit addicted to cookbooks the same way as I am skincare books. So the minute I see something exciting, but I do think these are the advantages that you have as you get older. You do have more time to invest in yourself. And when you look at the things that have really rocketed in lockdown, skincare has just, sales of skincare have gone up massively. Makeup dropped dramatically.
Yeah. Why skincare's gone up so much?
I think because several reasons. Women have time to reflect. I mean, we've actually got more time to sort of look inwardly at ourselves. I think also we've all become very concerned about keeping everything clean. Because we're washing our hands, we're sanitizing our hands. It's made us more aware of cleansers. And I think a lot of it is time. Actually people have got a bit more time at home. They're not traveling, they're working from home. But I do think it's that kind of self-care that we now are spending a bit more time, and people aren't buying makeup in the same way. I mean, I said the other day, I'm wearing makeup for Zooms and videos, and that's it. The rest of the time, what's the point? My poor postman, I think the postman will be doing this soon. So I think that's why skincare's gone up. Makeup not so much, because people are going out. And also beauty gadgets, beauty devices. Again, sales have just rocketed because everybody can't get to their aesthetic clinics, they can't have facials, so they're tending to do it more for themselves.
There's a local Edinburgh company actually won an award, and they managed to do sort of facials in a pack, and they were sending them to you, and the therapist was explaining what to do. Just about pivoting. I think that's been the other interesting thing just now. So many businesses, a bit like us really. Who would have thought we'd be doing online lessons? Cooking holidays.
It's great though, isn't it?
Yeah, it's amazing what you can do. And I think the first time we got in touch, it was about Pilates, and you were the great guru in Pilates. Are you still?
Not as much, mainly because at the time my teacher's classes closed down, and at that time she wasn't really teaching very much. And funny enough, she has now gone on to do online classes. So I have done a few of those.
And what else is on the planning for Fighting 50? What's coming up?
Well, to be honest, this year has been a complete write-off, really. I decided last year to rebuild the website. It was 7 years old. It was on an old platform. It was starting to look a little bit tired and a bit old-fashioned, and bits were dropping off of it, basically, like us all. And so we rebuilt the site, which meant that we got to a point where I couldn't put anything on the old site and I couldn't put anything on the new site. So we had a bit of a plateau at the end of last year. And then in January, the site relaunched, and I'd spent a hell of a long time just making sure that all the articles had moved over, all the links were working, all the images were still working, and just, really kind of getting into it. And then sadly, my husband was very ill, and then he got better, and we went into lockdown, and then my father's been really ill. So this year I seem to have spent most of my time running around looking after people and running their life. So as much as I'm keeping up with Fighting 50, I haven't really been pushing it forward as much as I would like to. But we are still focusing on the things that people are really wanting. So skincare, I have to say I've got out the loop a bit of doing videos and things like that, because normally I would do that with a partner who can't be here. Nikki can't be here. Genevieve's in Greece. So that has kind of taken a bit of a backseat. But we're still looking at great beauty devices. We've still got some really good experts. Dr. Sarah Brewer, who is on board as an expert. We're looking at things like CBD in more detail. We have looked at it a bit already. We're going into it in further detail. We're looking at a really great supplement for incontinence, which is really quite exciting, totally natural product that I'm trialing at the moment. So that it's constantly evolving, but we're looking at what people are needing now. So we're looking at, mental health, for example. Working from home is really taking its toll on.
I think so. Particularly, I think if you're looking after kids and parents and trying to keep a job, it's just full on.
It's tough, and not having downtime, because if you did go to an office and you came home in the evening, you had that break. You don't get that break now. Often we're working in the same room that we're supposed to be relaxing in, or I know some women are working in their bedroom, which makes it really hard, because that is your place where you go to unwind and to relax. So everybody's mental health is really a concern, and that's something we've been writing about a lot. How you cope with it, and also how we cope with getting back to a normal situation. I have to say, I haven't been on the tube since March, and just the thought of going back on the tube is actually quite unsettling. So a lot of people are starting to do things that we just took for granted before, that now we're actually a little bit hesitant. So there's a lot of things like that, getting back to what we remember as being normal.
We do. We've, for example, getting back to normal, we've been running holidays, so September and into October in Italy and in Scotland. And again, I think you're right. Lots of people, they want to go on holiday, but it's just trying to understand what's it going to look like now. What's it like on the plane? What's it like when you arrive? And it is. You need to have a bit of a leap of faith and a bit of confidence to do it.
And keeping people safe. You know, your job is to keep people safe, and you know, we have to get over that trust. You know, we have to trust that companies are going to look after us and care for us. And I know, having spoken to Claire and the girls at the body retreat, you know, this is what companies are really working towards, and that it's a big issue. Yeah. And I think
no, I get, yeah, we've obviously run holidays, and yeah, the behind the scenes work that's been involved in, yeah, training all the staff, you know, doing all your risk assessments. It's a huge amount of work, huge. And I think, and it's not something that's just going to be for just now. It's going to carry on.
Yeah, without doubt.
Yeah, but equally though, you know, this will be over at some point.
Yeah. And
actually, you know, we will want to travel again and go on holiday. And so hopefully we'll just have to still be here so that, you know, that can happen. I think that's the aim. Have you got any, you know, I know you're armchair travelling at the minute. Where would you be wanting to go to when you get released?
Well, actually, we had a week away because my husband's quite a bit older than me. He's 23 years older than me. So I have great experience of seeing the aging process, you know, from the 50s to the 80s close up. So having a husband and a father of the same age is an interesting situation. I've never done anything normally. So I've really seen how those changes come about. And the most noticeable thing for lockdown has been his mental health. Well, both my father and my husband, but my husband not so badly. But he was just literally climbing the walls. You know, we've got to have a change of scenery. So we actually booked a week in Lyme Regis and just rented an apartment and had a week walking and eating and lots of fresh air and sea air. And it was very safe. The company who rented the property made it very safe. All the restaurants and things that we went into, again, everybody kept everyone safe and at distance. And what was nice was people were so respectful, really respectful of each other. So for me, just being by the sea, there's something about the sea that's just, you know, so uplifting. So that was my destination of choice, to get down to Dorset and just be in the fresh air and be out of London really for a while.
And what's your plans then for getting on the tube? What are you thinking about that?
I'm just not. I'm literally not thinking about it. I was asked recently, you know, if I'd like to go to a press event in the West End, and I just said no thank you. And in fact, so many journalists said no thank you that it's now become a Zoom event, because I don't think it's that dangerous, but it is just not something that I
have to say, I was never very fussed on the tube before COVID. Whenever I was in London, it used to always be a great opportunity just to walk everywhere, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're very lucky because we live on the edge of Hampstead Heath.
Right.
So, you know, we have 1,000 acres literally at the bottom of the garden. But when we first went into lockdown, everybody came to Hampstead Heath. Yeah. It was absolutely packed. I can't tell you how busy it was. The roads, we had cars parked everywhere and just so many people. It has calmed down now, but at the time it was just so many people here. It was quite overwhelming, really.
Yeah, no, it's definitely been 2020. It's yeah, what a year.
Yeah, absolutely.
It will all be over at some point. Yeah. Which is great. That was a lovely conversation. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
It's a pleasure. Well, if you've got any more questions, just send them through.
Yeah, that's great. So I think the only other question I think probably that would be really useful would be, you know, you are a big advocate of aging positively. You know, why do you think it's so important?
I think it's really important because at the moment I see a lot of fear in younger women of aging. And I think a lot of it is fueled by social media. You have women in their 20s having Botox, wanting aesthetic treatments, wanting cosmetic treatments. And I think what we have to do is make younger women aware that there isn't a fear in aging, that yes, you can do it without having lots of different intervention. Obviously, you've got to take care of yourself, you've got to eat well, you've got to exercise, you have to invest in yourself, both not necessarily financially, but you have to invest time in yourself. But part of me also, when we went into lockdown, I had so many texts and messages like, oh my God, what are we going to do about our hair? How can we possibly not have our hair coloured? And I have to say, at the beginning, as we went into lockdown, my husband was really ill, and all I could think about was, getting him better. And I started off by, covering up my roots, as I have done, every 3 weeks before I was going to the hairdresser. I kept covering it up. The more I covered it up, the more I disliked it. Until in the end, I thought, why am I doing this to myself? Why don't I just see what it looks like when I go grey? And now I'm actually noticing on social media, there's a lot of younger women, women 20 years younger than me, who are embracing their natural hair colour and going grey. So I can see that kind of fear starting to change. And I feel it's a responsibility as an older woman to make younger women aware that it's not all doom and gloom. You can still do all the things that you want to do. You can age well, you can age confidently. So that's what I think is really important, that we do get this message across, that older age doesn't have to be a decline. Older age could be the start of something really exciting. It's not the end of something, it's the beginning.
You saying that reminds me of one experience we had at Flavours, and we used to do New Year holidays. They were always very, very popular. And I remember one year we had a group going to Tuscany, and there was maybe 8 guests, and they were all under 50, apart from this one lady who was in her 80s.
Oh, really?
And before the holiday happened in the office, there was a bit of like, oh, how's this going to work, the dynamics? And it was really funny because it was the 80-year-old that was up getting drunk until 2 in the morning. And it was the under 50s that were going to bed early. And I think it's so much about your attitude.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we see that a lot. And I also think, speaking personally, I remember, for example, my own grandmother, when she was sort of 80, she was really old and she sat in the chair and she didn't do very much. And I look at my own mother, who's now 87, and was travelling with us to South Africa last year. I think it's moved on so much compared to how it was, but it's definitely attitude.
Without a doubt. I had a wonderful friend who sadly died when she was 101 and 5 months. The months become very important once you get over 100. It's like a child, 2.5 and 2 3/4 or something. And I asked her what she put her longevity down to. And she said 3 things. Firstly, that she'd never lived in poverty. So she felt that she'd been very, very lucky that she hadn't. And then secondly, she said she'd never had a serious illness. She'd been very, very lucky, again, not to have ever been seriously ill. And she said thirdly, she woke up every day and thought, today's going to be a lovely day. And I just thought, that's amazing. And at 100, she had an incredible birthday party where she was there in a gold suit with fishnet tights and high heels and her makeup on, and gave the most amazing speech. And after about 20-25 minutes, she said, guys, I'll give you this half, but you come back next year and I'll tell you the other half. Brilliant. And it's that attitude, I think, that really carries people through.
Yes, particularly just now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is great. That's super. Thank you so much. That's been really great. I really enjoyed that. Super.
So nice to see you.
Yeah, it's really lovely actually. It's great. And I do think all our guests will really relate, because there's so many of our guests who are over 50, and just getting that positivity, the confidence, and not thinking it's the end, it's definitely the beginning. It's great. It's really, message well done you.
Thank you.
I'm sure I'm going to get lots of emails saying, tell me what our top tips are for skincare, or tell me the beetroot curry. So I'll keep you posted if you get any of them. Keep in touch.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Goodbye now. Bye-bye.
Bye.